In a bustling spaceport on the edge of known space, travelers spoke in hushed tones of the alien princes of Silvara. Traders brought tales of a world bathed in violet light, where crystal spires touched pale skies. They said the Princess Terra ruled with a silent authority. Her face was beautiful and strange, her eyes glowed like distant stars. Dozens of starship captains had tried to meet her. All had failed, some fled in fear. Others vanished without a trace. Over time, silence grew. Around her name and fear became its own legend. Ben Carter sat at the edge of a metal bench in the port's dim lounge. He listened to the whispers. He felt a soft tremor of curiosity. Across dozens of tables, men and women passed around holorecords of Silvara's deserts and waterfalls. Each map showed shifting dunes of amethyst sand and pools of light. None showed any safe path to the palace city. Even mercenaries laughed at the idea of a lone explorer reaching Terra, yet Ben could not look away. His heart felt heavy with wonder. Captain Carter had flown the starship Ariel through many dangers. He fought pirates beyond the rim, navigated storms of charged particles and charted forgotten outposts. Still, he admitted to himself that he knew little of fear. Not true fear, he thought of every narrow escape he had made. He cared more for his crew than for any treasure. But now, as he gazed at the holomap of Silvara, he felt a chill that no storm could bring. It was a fear born of the unknown. In his quarters, the night before departure, Ben opened an old journal. Pages were yellowed with age. His grandfather's handwriting filled every line. The entries spoke of an ancient cataclysm on Silvara. Centuries ago, a comet shattered their moon and changed their world forever. The crash stirred deep magic in the planet's core. Some said gods had wept on those crystal plains. They said the first rulers rose from the ashes to save the survivors. They'd bound themselves to the planet's power, and so each new princess carried both blessing and curse. Ben read how Terra's ancestors forged alliances with other worlds, only to betray them when danger passed. He read of wars fought over the planet's strange crystals. He learned that each princess grew up behind sealed gates, never knowing the world beyond the palace walls. They learned power and fear in equal measure. No stranger ever left her presence. None ever spoke freely of her wisdom. After a few lines, he closed the journal with a sigh. Fear had a voice here. Still, Ben did not walk away. He pressed his hand on the journal's cover. He felt the cool leather beneath his palm. He remembered his grandfather's last words. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to move forward, even when fear rules your mind. Ben thought of the stars beyond his window and his crew waiting for him. He thought of his own heartbeat, firm and steady. He chose to move forward. The next morning, Ben stood on the Ariel's bridge. His crew strapped into their stations. Navigator Mara Lynn scanned routes through nebulas and gravity wells. Engineer Luke Hill checked the plasma conduits. They all turned to Ben. He knew they braced for another dangerous mission. But when Ben spoke, his voice remained calm. We set course for Silvara, he said. We will meet Princess Terra. We will show her we come in peace. His eyes met Mara's. She nodded. Luke cracked a small grin. Their hope matched Ben's own. They trusted him to lead them safely. As they left the port, Ben watched the stars shift behind the observation window. Each glimmer felt like a promise. He whispered a quiet prayer to the memory of his grandfather. He asked for courage and wisdom. He asked for kindness, for not all legends told the full story. Maybe Terra feared strangers for good reason. Maybe she needed a friend more than an enemy. He hoped he could be that friend. When the Ariel dropped through Silvara's thin atmosphere, violet clouds swirled around the hull. The ship trembled under sudden storms of glowing rain. Ben gripped the armrest of his seat. He felt a rush of excitement under the fear. The ship broke through into calm skies, and below lay a city of crystal towers. They floated on vast lakes of pale blue light, bridges curved like petals in bloom. In the center rose a palace of shining metal. Ben forced himself to breathe slowly. Each breath brought calm. He recalled his grandfather's words again. He raised his hand and gave the command. The ship glided toward the landing platform. Guards in silver armor stood at attention, their helmets reflected the violet sky. At their center stood Terra. She wore a flowing robe that shimmered with every shade of pale cyan. Her hair fell like liquid moonlight over her shoulders. She watched the aerial descend. Ben straightened his uniform. He prepared to step onto the platform and into history. Around him, his crew held their breath. All fear felt distant now. Only one thought remained clear: he would approach the princess. He would speak for all who dared not risk truth for fear's sake. He would take the chance. The ramp lowered with a soft hiss. The air smelled of crystal dust and rain. Ben stepped forward, each foot landing softly on the platform. The guard shifted but raised no weapons. Terra remained still, observing the human who walked toward her. Ben paused a few meters away and bowed his head. He spoke in the common tongue. Clear and respectful. "Your Highness," he said softly, "I come in friendship." The words felt small in the vast space between them. But in that moment, silence held more power than any weapon. Terra's eyes searched his. Ben's heartbeat echoed in his chest. He wondered what she saw in him. He hoped she saw hope. Behind him, the crew waited. Their eyes met his once more. They saw the courage that brought them here. Ben lifted his gaze. To Terra, he took the next step forward. The future of two worlds balanced on a chance. Ben Carter was ready to shape that future. Ben stood on the platform while Terra watched him. Guards eyed him with cautious looks. Ben offered a small nod. Terra inclined her head once. The violet sky held its color in silence. In that instant, a fragile bridge formed between two worlds. Ben felt hope tremble in his chest. As Ben walked beside Terra, he noticed the crystal towers reflect soft light. Each tower shone with its own hue. Terra led him down a curved walkway. She spoke little, but her eyes observed every detail. Ben spoke. Again, his voice steady and kind. "Your world is beautiful," he said. "I am honored to see it." Terra paused at a low arch of polished stone. Guards held back while Ben knelt and touched the ground. He felt cool crystal under his fingers. Terra saw his respect. She stepped closer, letting him rise. A gentle wind stirred her long hair. Distant birds with translucent wings flew past. Ben barely dared to breathe. They came to a wide courtyard with pools of glowing water. Benches of carved rock sat around its edges. Terra gestured toward the water and smiled faintly. Ben heard water trickle over hidden channels. He knelt again. To peer into the pool. Shapes moved under the surface, strange fish with glass fins. Terra laughed softly. Ben straightened and asked Terra about her people. She spoke of her childhood behind the palace gates. She said she never touched the ground outside the city until she was old enough to rule. Ben listened and thought of his own home. He missed dusty fields and green grass. Terra seemed to sense his longing. They entered a hall carved from violet crystal. Light passed through its walls and danced on the floor. Fireflies of light drifted around them, released from hidden vents. Ben reached out but let them pass through his fingers. He marveled at their soft glow. Terra watched him closely, as if seeing friendship bloom. Ben asked Terra to show him the ritual chamber. She agreed. They walked through winding halls lit by floating lanterns. Guards stood at every turn, silent and still. Ben noticed the tension in their shoulders. He wondered if they trusted him. Terra glanced at him once. He nodded and felt courage. Returned, they came to a domed room filled with tall crystals. In its center stood a raised platform. Terra told Ben that this was where she received messages from her ancestors. She placed her hand on a crystal shard. Its surface hummed. Light pulsed, in time with her heartbeat. Ben felt a low hum in his own chest. Terra closed her eyes and spoke a soft phrase in her language. Sound wrapped around them like velvet. Images flickered within the crystals, a comet crashing, ancient people kneeling, a new kingdom rising from ash. Ben watched scenes play out like a living tapestry. He felt sorrow and pride in equal measure. When Terra opened her eyes, they glowed with pale light. Ben bowed his head again. He felt moved beyond words. Terra asked him to share a story from Earth. Ben thought of his crew and the Ariel. He told of a time when his ship saved a village from a storm. He spoke of teamwork and kindness. Tara listened, and then spoke of her own trial. She said her people faced a threat from a neighboring world. Armies gathered at their borders. She felt the weight of their fears. Ben placed a hand over hers. He spoke softly. "We can help," he said. "You do not face this alone." Tara's eyes widened. She pulled her hand back. Fear flickered across her face. She had not trusted so quickly. Ben saw tears form at the edge of her lashes. He smiled gently. "I will prove my word," he said. "Let me show you what we can do." They left the ritual chamber and returned to the courtyard. Mara, Lynn, and Luke Hill waited by the aerial shuttle. Mara held a holo projector. Luke carried a small crate of tools. Tara watched them with curiosity. Ben introduced his crew. Tara inclined her head and allowed Luke to show her a simple device that cleaned air. Luke placed a small filter in her palm. He explained how it worked in simple words. Tara turned the filter over and saw etched symbols like her own. She smiled at the coincidence. Ben explained they used it to help miners on harsh planets. Tara asked many questions. Each answer built trust. As the sun set behind crystal towers, Tara invited Ben and his crew to dine with her. They sat on low cushions around a glowing table. Food appeared in bowls that glowed faintly. Tara watched as Ben tasted alien fruits. He savored sweet petals and icy seeds. Tara laughed at his delight. After dinner, Tara led them to a balcony overlooking Silvara's lakes. The water reflected 2 moons and distant stars. Ben spoke of Earth's moon and how it guided tides. Tara reached out, her hand brushing his. He felt warmth spread through him. She did not pull away. Instead, she let her fingers rest against his. In that quiet moment, they shared what words could not convey. Tara saw a human not as a stranger, but as a friend. Ben saw a princess not as a legend, but as a person. The violet sky faded to deep blue. The lights of Silvara glowed around them. 2 hearts beat under alien stars. Ben cleared his throat. He knew the moment would not last. He spoke of plans to help Tara defend her people. She nodded, her resolve firming. She would trust him enough to let him try. Ben felt pride at her decision. Joy bloomed in his chest like a first flower. As they walked back to the palace, Tara and Ben spoke of names and places. They learned each other's languages in tiny bits. Mara and Luke trailed behind, smiling. Guards relaxed their stance as they passed. The palace halls felt less cold now that laughter echoed within. Ben paused at the palace gates. He looked back at Tara. She met his gaze. He bowed once more. She bowed back. In that simple exchange, their bond took root. Ben stepped through the gates and turned to his crew. They followed him with bright eyes and eager hearts. Later in his quarters, Ben opened his journal again. He wrote of Tara's kindness and her fear. He sketched the crystal halls and the glowing fish. He wrote of hope and new friendships. He closed the journal and lay back on his cot. He fell asleep dreaming of violet skies. Tara stood on her balcony long after Ben left. She watched the Ariel's lights fade into the sky. She felt her people's hope rise with every star. She whispered a promise to herself. She would risk everything for this human who came in kindness. She would let him stand beside her in the trials to come. Below, Silvara slept under watchful moons. A silent city dreamed of dawn. 2 worlds rested on the edge of change. One human had taken a chance and everything felt possible. As the night deepened, hope found a place to grow. In hearts once ruled by fear. Ben paused at the edge of the palace garden, where glowing vines curled around pale stone arches. Tara stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the distant hills beyond the city. She spoke softly. My people speak of a rising threat. They say soldiers gather beyond the crystal plains. Ben nodded. He had seen the holo reports. A neighboring world's fleet moved in quiet formation. They walked together into the moonlit courtyard. Lamps of drifting light hovered above pools of glowing water. Guards lined the path, but their armor felt less tense now. Ben's calm presence gave them hope. Tara saw the change. She reached for Ben's hand and he squeezed it. She led him to a low bench carved from violet crystal. "Tell me how we will face them," she said. Ben opened his field notebook and showed her simple diagrams. He drew lines where shield drones could form a barrier. He explained how Earthships used energy nets to block enemy fire. Tara studied each line, her brow furrowed. She asked questions in short phrases, and Ben answered with quiet confidence. As they planned, guards hurried through the courtyard. Mara Lynn arrived, breathless, carrying a small holoprojector. Luke Hill followed, fastening tools to his belt. Mara set the projector on a stone table. Ben tapped the device. A three-dimensional map of Silvara formed, lit in pale blues and greens. Lights blinked where enemy units moved. Tara leaned forward. "Their numbers grow," she said. "They will." "Strike at dawn." Ben touched the map. He drew a circle around the city's energy core. He said, "We use this as our strong point. We build shields here, then extend them to enclaves where your people live." Tara nodded slowly. She began to see his plan. Ben organized small teams of guards and crew. Engineer Luke took charge of power units. He called a group of palace techs. To help, Mara arranged comlinks between the teams. Tara watched, her calm strength inspiring everyone. She spoke to her guards in soft tones. They saw her trust in Ben and felt new courage. Through the night, workers built shield generators. At narrow gatehouses, drills hummed in quiet halls. Ben moved among them, offering water rations and words of thanks. Tara walked beside him, offering pale blue fruits that tasted of moonlight. They shared quick smiles. The city felt alive with purpose. Beneath the palace, rebels stirred in secret tunnels. They had watched Ben's moves. They feared change and hoped to seize Tara as ransom. A rebel leader named Karan spoke to his followers. His face was hard under glowing tattoos. He said, "The human is a fraud. Tonight we will capture the princess and force her to surrender." Karan's men armed themselves with crystal blades and silent rifles. They crept through tunnels that led under the great walls. Lanterns of violet fire guided their path. No guard spotted them. They moved with practiced stealth. Soon they reached a hidden door etched with ancient runes. Karan pressed his palm. The door slid open. Inside, they found a side entrance to the palace stables. Crates of supplies stood against the far wall. Tara and Ben had gone to inspect a shield generator there. Guards patrolled outside but did not see the rebels slip past them. Karan signaled his men to wait. He pressed forward alone. Tara knelt beside a device the size of a small tower. Wires glowed like living veins. Luke and a palace tech checked. "Readings?" Tara asked Luke if the generator could support an extended shield. Luke paused, surprised by the princess's interest. He answered, "Yes, but only if we reroute power." Tara said, "Then do it." Ben studied the wiring. He moved a lever and watched the field coil spin. A soft hum rose in the air. He turned to Tara and smiled. "We are ready," he said. Tara nodded. She felt pride in her new ally. In the shadows, Karan counted to 3 and stepped into the light. His rifle raised. He yelled, "Stop where you are!" Guards outside heard the shout and ran in. They fired warning shots. Ben grabbed Tara and pushed her behind the generator. Shards of crystal sparkled in the air. Karan's single quotes as men burst in, blades gleaming under violet lamps. Luke shoved a tech behind a crate and pulled out his own rifle. Mara rushed in through a side corridor, her blaster drawn. Tara raised her hand and spoke a command in her own tongue. Crystal shutters closed across the room's entrances, slowing the rebels' advance. Ben stood in front of Tara. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Stay back," he said. Karan charged at Ben, his blade raised high. Ben stepped forward and used the generator's coil as cover. A blast of energy sent Karan stumbling back. His blade clattered to the floor. Guards flooded the room. They pushed the rebels toward closed doors. Mara and Luke worked at the shutters, sealing exits. Tara touched the generator's control panel. A brilliant barrier of violet light sprang to life above the palace walls. It cut through the darkness like a crown of energy. Rebels outside the gates shouted in surprise. Inside, guards disarmed. Karan and his followers. Ben walked through the barrier's dome and saw the generators glow in every corner of the city. He turned to Tara. She watched the shield arc above her world. A tear slipped down her cheek. Ben placed a gentle hand under her chin. "You are safe," he said. Guests in the courtyard cheered. Workers stopped their tasks to watch the barrier bloom across the sky. Tara stepped onto a low platform. She stood beside Ben and raised her hand. Her voice echoed across the courtyard. It was calm and strong. "Today we passed a trial," she said. "We stand together, human and Silverin. We choose hope over fear." Ben felt a wave of joy wash over him. He heard his crew cheer. He saw guards salute. He knew they had made history. But he also saw the worry in Tara's eyes. She knew this victory bought only a moment of safety. The real test lay ahead, uniting her people behind this new alliance. That night, Ben and Tara met in a quiet chamber beneath the palace. They sat on cushions around a low table. A small fire of glowing embers crackled in a crystal hearth. Tara offered Ben a cup of sweet tea infused with violet petals. He sipped and felt warmth spread through him. She spoke of Karan and his followers. She said they would rally more rebels, driven by old fears and new doubts. Ben nodded. He said, they would need to reach each enclave, show them the barrier's power and the humans' goodwill. Tara listened and traced the rim of her cup. Ben reached out and held her hand. She did not pull away. He said, "We will travel together. I will speak to your people." Tara's gaze met his. She saw sincerity in his eyes. She saw a future beyond court politics. She felt trust grow. Ben sketched a simple plan on a small holopad. They listed the enclaves in order of distance. They noted key leaders to meet. They estimated time and resources needed. Tara added notes in her own script. They worked long into the night, mixing their words and ideas. By dawn, they stood at the palace gates. Tara wore a simple robe of pale cyan. Ben wore his uniform without insignia. Guards stood guard, but this time they smiled. Tara raised her hand in greeting to the first caravan bound for the nearest enclave. Ben climbed into the lead vehicle. As they departed, Tara whispered, "May this journey bring peace." Ben reached out and touched her hand. She withdrew it gently and looked ahead. The path to unity stretched before them, winding through violet fields and crystal plains. They traveled side by side, princess and human, forging a bond that no fear could break. Beneath the rising sun, Silvara stirred. Two figures set forth on the road of hope. Each step carried promise, each moment wove trust. The world beyond the palace gates awaited them, ready for new stories of courage and friendship. In that moment, Ben and Tara knew that together they could face any trial, and so the next chapter began, where words would heal old wounds and actions would shape new legends. Their journey had only just begun. Ben and Tara rode in a low hover vehicle across violet fields dotted with crystal flowers. The first enclave lay ahead. Simple homes of pale stone circled a small plaza. People paused in their tasks when they saw the princes and the human arrive. They whispered among themselves. Some held children close. Others watched from doorways. Tara stepped out first. She wore a plain robe and moved without fanfare. Ben followed, his uniform clean but unadorned. Mara Lynn and Luke Hill stayed near. The vehicle, ready to help. Tara raised her hand in greeting. Her voice carried across the plaza in soft tones. "We come in peace," Ben said. His voice was firm but gentle. The enclave leader, an elder named Reza, stepped forward. His hair was silver, his face lined with years of worry. He bowed slightly to Tara. Then he looked at Ben. "Why should we trust a human?" Reza asked. His voice was wary. Tara glanced at Ben. He nodded and took a small device from his pocket. It was a portable shield generator. He placed it on the ground and flipped a switch. Blue light spread in a dome around the plaza. People gasped. Luke pressed a button on a handheld console and showed the power output. Mara spoke of how this dome could protect families from sudden attacks. Tara said, "This is only the start. We can build many more of these." Children came near the edge of the dome. They touched the light with wonder. Parents relaxed and smiled. Reza stepped out of the dome and turned it off. He looked at Ben and Tara with new respect. "We will help you," he said. "We will send supplies and workers." Tara thanked him and placed a hand on Ben's arm. She felt hope growing. Ben felt pride and relief. That night, they camped near the enclave's edge. Guards stood watch as Ben and Tara sat by a small fire. He spoke of Earth's customs. She spoke of Silvara's festivals. They laughed as they shared simple meals of roasted fruit and warm bread. In the dark, Ben saw lines of worry on Tara's face. He reached for her hand. "You carry a heavy burden," he said. Tara nodded. "My people need me," she replied. "But I am still learning to lead." Ben squeezed her hand. "You are not alone," he said. The next day, they traveled to a larger enclave. This one lay beside a lake of glowing water. Homes rose on stilts above the surface. Fish with silver scales swam beneath wooden walkways. Guards in light armor met them at the shore. Here, some villagers still feared humans. They remembered old wars. Tara stepped forward and told them of the barrier that saved the palace. Ben spoke of his promise to protect all Silverans. Mara and Luke set up a hollow display of ships from Earth working with Silveran vessels. A young woman named Mila came forward. She was a scholar who studied Silvara's history. She asked many questions about life on Earth. Ben answered simply. How people worked together, how they learned from mistakes, how they valued friendship. Mila smiled and offered to write letters to other enclaves, but not all were convinced. A merchant named Dallin crossed his arms. He said, "We trade with both worlds. If we anger one, we lose everything." Tara nodded and said, "We seek balance, not division." She spoke of a future where trade and peace grew together. Hora's eyes softened. That evening, a storm blew in from the hills. Twin moons hid behind dark clouds. Winds rattled tents and soaked the ground. Tara and Ben helped villagers secure their homes. They waded through knee-deep water, carrying supplies. Ben felt the weight of wet robes but kept walking. Tara stood beside him, her face calm despite the storm. When the rain eased, a small group of guards pointed to distant lights on the hills. Enemy scouts had moved closer during the storm. Ben and Tara rode out with a dozen guards. They reached a ridge and found scouts in pale armor. The scouts fired warning shots. Ben raised his hands and called out, "We are friends," he shouted. Tara stepped forward too. She spoke in the scouts' language, a harsh tongue none else spoke. Her words were calm and clear. The scouts paused. Their leader lowered his rifle. Tara asked him why he was here. He said his people feared the barrier would trap them. He thought the princes betrayed them. Tara listened, her face gentle. She spoke of safety for all, of a ring of light that did not block trade routes. She offered to escort their traders through safe corridors. The scout leader hesitated, then nodded, then smiled and shook his hand. The barrier glowed faintly behind them. They returned to the enclave and announced the treaty. Villagers cheered and lit lanterns. Tara and Ben stood on a small stage of rock. Tara raised a hand. "We choose unity," she said. Ben added, "We stand together as friends." The crowd roared in reply. That night, Tara and Ben walked along the lake's edge. The water reflected the lanterns like stars. He spoke of his home, of green forests and blue oceans. She spoke of her childhood in crystal halls. They paused when a soft ripple passed their feet. Glass fish swam near the shore. Ben knelt and cupped water in his hands. Tara watched him with a gentle smile. He offered her water. She drank and closed her eyes against the coolness. He saw her breathe deeper, as if freed from a long worry. They spoke of the next enclave, farther away. Ben drew a simple map in the sand with a stick. Tara studied it and nodded. She said, "We will make our stand where the plains meet the mountains." Ben agreed. They rose and walked back to Camp Da. As dawn broke, they left the lakeside enclave. Guards formed a guard of honor. Mila and Reza rode with them for a time, waving farewell. Tara watched them go, her heart light. Ben pressed a hand to her back in support. The road ahead climbed into misty hills. Tall rock spires loomed overhead. The wind carried faint cries of distant creatures. Tara looked at Ben. "I feel afraid," she said quietly. Ben took her hand. "Fear is part of the path," he replied. "We walk it together." They rode on side by side across deep green grass and broken stone. Each step brought them closer to the next challenge. But for the first time, both felt hope more than fear. They would face what lay ahead as friends and allies, united by trust and courage. Ben and Tara led their growing force along the mountain pass, where pale mist curled around jagged stones. Guards carried shield generators and supplies. Ben rode beside Tara, his gaze firm on the path ahead. Mara and Luke walked behind, checking power packs. Silveran warriors followed on foot, their faces set with quiet resolve. Villagers from the earlier enclaves had joined them, clutching simple weapons in hope. As they climbed, the wind grew colder and the sky darker. Distant thunder rolled across the peaks. Tara pressed her hand against the cool metal of her hover vehicle and drew a steady breath. She thought of her people's homes and the future she wished to build. Ben felt the weight of her hopes and his own promise. He reached out and touched her arm. She nodded, and he offered a small, encouraging smile. They crested the final ridge and saw the invaders' encampment below. Rows of pale tents lay within the curve of a frozen river. Alien! Banners waved in the wind, and armored soldiers marched in patrol lines. Ben raised his hand to halt the column. He surveyed the enemy's strength more than they had expected. Fear threatened to rise in his chest. Tara sensed it and touched his hand gently. "We stand for peace," she said in a quiet voice. "We can still offer them mercy." Ben nodded. He spoke softly to his crew. "We will open the barrier, call them to parley. If they refuse, we defend ourselves." Mara and Luke hurried to adjust the generators. Guards formed two lines, each holding a portable shield. Tara took a deep breath and stepped forward. She and Ben walked toward the river's edge, where enemy scouts had gathered. Luke and Mara stood with silveran text to activate the dome between the armies. Tara raised her voice in the common tongue. "Soldiers of the North," she called, "I am Princess of Silvara. This human stands with me. We offer you safe passage home. Lay down your arms. Join us in peace." Her words drifted across the frozen air. A hush fell over both sides. Wind tossed Tara's robe and Ben's hair. The enemy leader, a tall figure in pale armor, stepped forward. He held a double-bladed spear and spoke in his harsh tongue. Tara waited, her hands open. Ben watched the leader's eyes. They saw no fear, only duty. The leader spoke again, slower this time. Mara pressed a come button to translate. They heard, "We come to claim Silvara's crystals. We cannot leave empty-handed." Ben said, "We will share our knowledge and trade freely. You do not need to take by force." The leader frowned. He looked at his troops. Some lowered their weapons, others gripped them tighter. Tara spoke again. "Let us seal a treaty, build a future together." She felt her voice grow stronger. Soldiers on both sides shifted uncertainly. Beneath the dome, Luke activated the shield network. A soft violet glow spread across the river. Ice cracked under its power. The tents and soldiers stood within the light. Tara stepped to the center. Ben stood beside her. They faced the enemy leader together. The wind died down in the dome as if the barrier brought calm. The leader glanced at his soldiers. One by one, they lowered their spears. A silence fell, broken only by distant dripping water. Tara nodded and smiled at Ben. He offered a nod back. The barrier hummed low and steady. Guards on both sides relaxed. A few Silveran warriors stepped forward to shake hands with enemy scouts. In the hush, Mara projected a cabin on a holopad, a council table where representatives from both worlds could meet. Tara spoke of laws to share crystal mines without warfare. Ben spoke of technology to improve farming in the harsh valleys. The enemy leader listened, his face unreadable. Finally, he raised a hand and said, "We will send delegates." Mara cheered quietly. Luke grinned and fist bumped her. As the two armies withdrew their forces, Ben and Tara walked among the soldiers, offering water and blankets. Silverans and invaders exchanged cautious smiles. Some shared simple meals by glowing fires. Tara saw tears of relief on a young soldier's cheek as he spoke in quiet tones to a former foe. Ben felt hope bloom in his heart. That night, Tara and Ben stood on a high balcony in the invaders' main tent. All around, muffled voices of treaty talks drifted through sealed flaps. Lamps of pale blue light cast gentle shadows. Tara wore a simple cloak over her robe. Ben wore his uniform, dirt and snow still clinging to the edges. Tara leaned on the railing. She watched the valley below, where the barrier formed a ring of violet light around both camps. Ben joined her and placed a hand on her back. She rested her head on his shoulder. They stood together, silent in their triumph and fatigue. "We did it," Ben said softly. "We showed them a new path," Tara nodded. "We did this together," she replied. Her voice trembled with emotion. Ben turned to her and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. He placed a gentle finger beneath her chin and raised her face to his. She looked into his eyes. For a moment, time held still. The world outside faded to distant hum. Ben's breath brushed Tara's lips. She leaned in, her eyes half closed. Then the sound of distant laughter reached them, guards celebrating below. They broke apart and laughed together, their relief mirrored in each other's eyes. The next day, representatives from Savara and the invaders' world met beneath the barrier. A simple table stood on a snowy plain. Tara sat at one side, Ben at her left. Opposite them sat the enemy leader and his chief envoy. Paper-like tablets lay ready for signatures. Mara adjusted her holoprojector. Luke checked the power flow. Tara signed first, her script flowing in graceful curves. The envoy next wrote his world's name on the treaty. Ben and the enemy leader shook hands across the table. Cheers rose from both camps. Guards and workers removed the barrier in slow sweep, leaving a single ring of violet light as a marker of peace. As the armies parted, Silverin and invader students mingled at the river's edge. Tara and Ben walked through the crowd, greeting friends new and old. A merchant from the lakeside enclave offered Tara a small crystal heart as a gift. A scout from the northern world bowed to Ben and said, "Thank you for your faith." Ben clasped the scout's hand and smiled. That evening, Ben and Tara rode back to the palace on the aerial shuttle. The ship glowed lightly against the dark sky. Tara watched the landscape pass below, frozen mountains, violet fields, crystal cities aglow. Ben sat beside her, tired but happy. He reached out and held her hand. She rested her head against his shoulder. In the palace courtyard, a crowd waited with torches and music. Silverin dancers twirled in pale silks. Earth musicians played simple tunes on stringed instruments. Mara and Luke joined the parade, leading soldiers with flags of both worlds. Tara and Ben emerged together, hand in hand. The crowd cheered and flowers rained down in soft petals. Tara stepped onto a small platform, Ben by her side. She spoke in her gentle voice, translated by Mara's device. "Today we chose peace," Tara said. "We showed that fear can yield to trust. We stand together, human and Silverin, as one people." Ben spoke next, his words warm. "We share our strengths and our hope. Together we build a future of light." Cheers rose again, echoing off crystal walls. The music swelled and dancers formed a ring around Ben and Tara. They joined hands and spun once, laughing. Lanterns of violet light floated into the sky, carrying wishes from every heart. Later, Ben and Tara walked through the palace gardens, now lit by the soft glow of crystal lanterns. They stopped by a fountain where water glowed with gentle light. Tara drew Ben close and whispered, "Thank you for taking a chance on me." Ben kissed her forehead. "Thank you for trusting me," he replied. They sat on a stone bench and watched the lanterns drift upward. Each carried a promise of friendship, of peace, of new stories yet to come. Tara closed her eyes and breathed in the cool night air, filled with hope. Ben wrapped an arm around her and held her close. In the quiet, Tara began to speak of her dreams, a school where humans and Silverins studied together, a trade route of shared goods and art, a council of voices from every world. Ben listened, his smile bright in the lantern light. He spoke of Earth, of green forests beneath twin suns, of oceans that sang with waves. They planned late into the night, forging the shape of a future born from courage and love. Behind them the palace slept under peaceful moons. Around them, Silvara dreamed of dawn. In that moment, two hearts beat as one, ready to write the next chapter of a shared destiny.